Deep
Welcome,
breath.
welcome, welcome, everyone. It is Nina from Yoga Awakening Africa, and I am excited to be chatting with my good friend, Victoria Fearon, who used to be hanging out in Marina de Gama down the road from me, but has now decided to head into the tranquil little town of Claremont, somewhere around there. How are you, V?
Hi, Nina. I'm really, really well. Thank you for the invitation. I think this is going to be a fun conversation.
Yeah, definitely, definitely, definitely. I think we can just like go straight into it, step straight into it, jump straight
Mm,
into because you and me, we've been in the yoga world for a while. We actually met, I think you just come down from Pretoria, good old Pretoria, Joburg,
mhm,
Pretoria, and you were kind of like,
mm.
where are the yogis in Cape Town? And I think I was having an open day or like a shop day or something like that. And I
Yeah,
said,
that's right. You were.
And I was like, this is a cool woman. She's funky. And then you were like, well, I'm going to do more yoga. And you did the Academy's, what is it, 300 teacher training in about 2014. I think you were one of the
Yeah,
first ones, our first
yeah,
group, which was really, really cool. So we got to hang out more. And then you were like teaching at the studio and you had your studio going. And you've come on like all of our yoga retreats, and everyone absolutely loves your classes because you just have the most exquisite way of describing things. Like, first of all, like, how did you get that? Because for those of you like who don't know Victoria, have never done a class with Victoria, you totally need to go and check that out. But like how do you get all these fantastic imageries into your mind when you're teaching?
I think when you've been doing yoga for a while, I think so if you are watching this interview, chances are you're a yoga person. And you've been in a group where a teacher has asked you to do something and you've thought, you what? Say that again, you what? And it just hasn't made sense. So I try to explain things in terms that make sense to people. So if they are into gardening, and the way that I explain something might be have sort of like a gardening metaphor or a cooking metaphor or a dog metaphor or I don't know, something. But it has to land in such a way that the person feels comfortable with it and that they can see it in their mind and then start to feel it in their body.
Mhm.
And sometimes it doesn't work, I must be honest. And I'll look at people and think, did I really ask everybody to do that? Because I don't think so. But anyway, but we have a lot of fun. And I think you have to have fun.
Mm.
I think
Yeah.
there's enough stuff in the world which is not fun. And I think your yoga practice has to be fun.
Mm. Which brings me to like another aspect with regards to that. And
Hmm.
that is the idea of like, okay, making your yoga practice a little bit more fun, but also the fact that like yoga is becoming more and more accepted now by the general population and the public. I mean, when you're in Cape Town, like it seems like every second person not only just does yoga there, but they're also teaching yoga there. And then when you go into the little like outskirts and the little dorpies here and there, yoga is not that prevalent. Even
No,
if it
it's
is
not.
Hermanus or Botrefier or, Kleinmond or Onrus, you'll find like, the odd maybe little teacher here and there, but it's definitely not a big thing.
No,
However, you're saying that it's actually starting to become a little bit more and more accepted because you've been out in the sticks for the last 2 years now, thereabout nearly.
you're not allowed to call it the stick.
Oh,
It
I'm not allowed
isn't.
to call it the sticks.
Yeah, but um, when I first arrived there, people said, "Oh, we used to have a yoga teacher, but she's gone now." And that was like the end of the conversation. I thought, well, maybe we can find a place to do yoga and maybe you'd like to join. But it's taken a long time. It's taken me a good 2 years to get a lot of people to understand that actually it is a normal activity. And if they drove over the mountain to Cape Town, they would be like immersed into a whole new world of yoga. But where I am, it's still quite unusual. So just getting people to understand that I'm not asking you to change your faith. to abandon your principles, that all we're going to do is move our bodies in a mindful way and find a way to relax, find a way to feel centered. And it's getting there, but it is taking time. Mm.
And what do you think has been kind of like shift where, people have shifted to being willing to try and it becoming more
Um,
acceptable?
I think if you are a teacher moving into an area where there is not a yoga culture, I think one of the things that goes against yoga is that it has, or it can have, a bit of a flaky kind of energy around it. And I think if you want to start a yoga community, you have to show up regularly. You have to prove that you will be there every week, regardless.
Mm. Mm.
So just that commitment, I think, has probably been responsible for creating the success that I've eventually started to experience here. So just showing up and and not trying to change what people think. It's not about changing what you think. Maybe about thinking in a different way.
Mm.
Um, and it's been quite interesting showing people that yes, we all accept that we are very different on the outside, but we're different on the inside as well, not just in the way that we think, but our bones are different shapes, our organs might not function in exactly the same way, muscles are different lengths. And once people can start to get their head around that, then they understand that it can't be one size fits all, that this is not a cookie cutter activity, that maybe one person does a posture like this, but they're going to do it like that, and it's going to have exactly the same wonderful benefits, but they're going to find them sort of via a different route, as it were.
Mm. Mm. And I think
Mm.
that comes with time with, teaching that
Mm.
you see bodies
Yeah.
differently, you can understand.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
yeah. And so what have you noticed, I suppose, kind of like living out in Claremont now
Mm.
with regards to like body shapes, maybe not quite body shapes, because like you're saying, like
Um,
everything is different, but maybe also like mental disposition. Was there very much like a different type of mental disposition to like your students that you were working with before in Marina? Or
Absolutely. I think so where I am now is fairly conservative. So it doesn't help if I suddenly start quoting Yoga Sutras or Bhagavad Gita, because that is not going to fly.
Mm, mm,
However, if and I feel like I've had to drop some things, but I'm trying to spread the same message but in a different way. So taking the message, but maybe not the exact words, if that makes sense.
yeah, yeah.
Um, as far as you started to say, sort of body types, there are a lot of fit people here. A lot of people hike and mountain bike, but uh, those activities bring their own challenges. So yoga can always make the body feel easier.
Mm,
And I think one of the biggest challenges that people have to learn in yoga is how to relax. We don't relax easily as a species. It's not, tell people exactly where to put their foot, their arm, whatever, they're up for it because they think that they're doing something. But just being is very, very, very challenging.
yeah, that is such an
Yeah.
insightful, and that's the one thing that I find for me is difficult as well. I can do, I've got enough Peter and fire in me to do and get things done.
Mm,
Actually, take a step back and just
mm.
be. I find that very, very challenging, and that is such a good point as well. Just to realize that okay, sometimes it's being and being still is actually
Yeah,
more beneficial than being in the do state.
absolutely. And I think especially as women, we're really great at being there for other people and being supportive and anticipate our needs. But when it comes to our own bodies and our own
Before we
minds,
start recording,
we
I'm like, all
are,
of a sudden, I have got, visitors coming for lunch and dinner. And Greg's like, oh, and
yeah,
they're just seem too nice. And there's someone else coming up there. I was like, but like, we just cope, we make it work.
yeah. And we're great at doing it for others, but we're really rubbish at doing it for ourselves. And it's almost kind of seen like a cop out or really being flaky or selfish. Um, it takes a long time to allow ourselves just to be able to just chill out for a little bit, even to take 10 minutes regularly per day. It's like, this is my quiet time. This is me. You're not going to interrupt me. And we find it very, very, very difficult.
Yeah.
And dealing, most of my clients, not all of them, but most of them fit into um, the older category. And that is really, really hard for these people to actually just take time and do nothing
Mm.
because their whole life has been doing something, whatever it was something, and then we're busy.
Yeah. And that's one other area I wanted us to touch on is this
Mm.
idea of yoga being more acceptable to all ages. Because when we started out, a few years ago, you kind of like and when social media was just coming alive, you saw like, the pretty girls and their little leotards doing it, and it was kind of like this picture perfect way of doing yoga. And it was very much like female and very much younger and very, very
Mm.
flexible. And and me, like, my studio is very much like pretty much to the 40 to 70-year-olds are coming. And it's always been that space where it's just like, we're doing gentle, restorative type of yoga. Doesn't mean it's going to
Mm.
be easy all the time.
No, no.
But we're not jumping back and forth, and we're just acknowledging where our bodies are. You're like, they may just be a little stiffer, a little heavier, and we can still get the benefits, no
Mm.
matter what age. So why are you, I mean, I know you enjoy working with what should we call them, the mature population, or what benefits have you, like, just tell us a little bit on like the benefits that you've seen there, why you enjoy
Um,
working, like where the resistance has been with them, your take on it.
so the clients that I often end up with are the people that nobody else was willing to take, which sounds a bit which sounds a bit grim, but but if somebody's had a hip replacement, a knee replacement, then their normal sport and activities, fitness activities, whatever you want to call it, are suddenly not available.
Mm.
Um, and they say, oh, well, I used to do X, Y, Z, but now I can't. So now I've come to try yoga. And like one part of me thinks, oh, well, gee, thanks, it's not like the last resort. However, those people become my biggest allies because they are the ones who can now move more easily, they can breathe more easily, and yeah, they can go back and do Pilates. I don't really, okay, I'm not going to say anything about Pilates because I know there are people watching this that love it, but anyway, um, but and they go back to that or golfing or tennis or whatever it was or walking, but they still come back because they find that yoga gives them a whole body experience, which the other things didn't.
Mm. Mm.
And it's often very difficult to convey that to somebody unless they've been like forced to come and try a yoga class. I also find that we create really amazing little communities within our teaching studios or wherever it is that we're teaching or online. And it's a place where people feel seen and included.
Yeah.
And I think that is so important as people get older because often We associate ourselves with maybe a role that we used to have, a job title, or something we used to do. And when that changes, people often feel invisible and less and of less value, which is a real shame.
Mm,
And what I found with these little yoga communities is that people begin to appreciate other people that have the same sort of challenges, but they also appreciate themselves more as well, and they feel better about themselves. And you and I both know that certain types of yoga postures have certain effects on the body. So, I mean, very, very, I don't want to oversimplify it, but back bends are energizing and they give a person confidence. That doesn't mean that we have to be doing a full-on wheel, because you can't do that with somebody that's got osteoporosis, but you can still do that in such a way you can still create a very safe back bend that's going to allow them to open up and to feel more spacious and more confident. So
mm,
that's what I really, really enjoy, is using yoga to bring out the best in people, to maybe rediscover parts of themselves that they'd forgotten about.
mm, mm. And so the kind of like when
Mm,
you're teaching, I mean,
mm.
you know who's coming to your classes. Do you
Sometimes,
tailor
yeah.
sometimes, do you tailor them specifically, like your classes specifically around a theme, or like
Um,
how does it work for you?
okay, sometimes I try to start off with a plan. However, um, I've given up the idea that everything is going to go to plan. Because when I first started teaching, I would spend hours and hours writing up these very, very detailed lesson plans. And
And
I'd
you have
get,
files and files and files of lesson plans.
you know what, Nina, I actually threw them out. Do you know that? I let them go.
Did you? Oh my
Yeah,
word, congratulations.
yeah. I thought, you know what? Let's just get real here. Just let it go. Um, and but you have to have a plan as such. You have to know kind of like the basic direction that you're going in and what it is that you want to teach. However, you don't know what people have experienced prior to arriving at your class. And that goes for any teacher, and not just dealing with older people. Um, so the postures that I teach are always postures that can be adapted. So regardless of whatever somebody is feeling or experiencing, that if they want to try them, they can. We use a lot of props. Because I'm not working in a studio environment anymore, I don't use bolsters, because that would mean that I had to cart bolsters around with me, which really isn't very practical. But you can do lots and lots of things with two cushions and a chair. Um, you can use balls, you can use all kinds of things. So props are really, really good. And I think the props are great for anybody. It doesn't matter whether they're able-bodied or they need a little bit more support. I think props help you to deepen your practice.
Mm, mm. And are props something that you worked with at the beginning, from the beginning of your teaching, or is it something that kind of like
Um,
evolved and developed with time?
yes, yes, and yes. Because when I first started doing yoga, I used to go to an Iyengar class. And everybody who went to class, you had to have your own set of props. So you had to have a strap and four foams and a blanket.
Mhm.
So props have always been part of my practice. Although I think you've got to get a bit more flexible with your props, because you're not always in a place where you have the same kind of things available. And as long as somebody's not trying to balance on a glass-topped coffee table, I'm happy to allow them to use whatever they have around them. Um, yeah, get curious. I think also it's empowering saying to a person, do you know that you can make a fantastic prop with a rolled up bath towel or a bath mat?
Mm.
And this is how we do it. And when people have made their own little prop, they get really quite chuffed about it. And experiment using it in different ways. So you don't have to go out and buy anything expensive or complicated. We have most of the things around us at home, and you can practice with those things.
Mm. And that's such a good point, V, that you make with regards to, there's so much consumerism around nowadays.
Yeah,
And the idea is like, actually, our yoga practice should be there to help us simplify our life. Like, it
yeah,
shouldn't be getting more complicated. We shouldn't be spending more money. It should be there to get us more in tune with nature. So, again, if we've got stuff lying around, if we've got extra
mm,
towels, extra blankets, we can use those very, very simply and easily. And then, like you're saying, it's actually super empowering and you build your confidence because you realize you're
mm,
not always reliant on external sources for something, for
no,
support.
no,
And this is just like a yogic example, like, yoga prop example, but we can take it through our whole life with regard to, like, the type of foods we're eating or the type of
mm,
clothes we're wearing. Like or the way people see us or value us in our workplace or in our social life. Like, we can take that mentality in through
mm.
all areas of our life. So you were going to say
Yeah,
something.
no. All I was going to say was that I have clients at sort of opposite ends of the scale. I have clients who are very, very wealthy, and I could say to them, here's the link to purchasing whatever online. Please, can you get that for next week? And they'll say, no problem, and it could be there. However, at the other end of the scale, I have people who are existing on a very small pension, and there
Mm,
isn't that option. So I never ever recommend buying props if it can be made. So last week we did some really cool things with a roll that we've made with a bath towel and 2 rubber bands. And everybody had the same prop and everybody got this, well, obviously not the same results because everybody's body's different, but everybody felt really quite happy using that prop. So I think if you keep your practice accessible to as many people, because that is a big thing for me, making yoga accessible, that it's not about having the sparkliest tights or the fanciest props or the most expensive mat. Yeah, it should be available to everybody.
Yeah. And I think that's what I love about UV is this fact, like, that word accessible actually is like what encompasses you. It's like you really are the person, the yoga teacher, who does make yoga accessible to everyone, no matter your ability, like physical ability, no matter your age, no matter where you're at, whatever. Like, anyone is always welcome to your classes. And I think that's what I really love about you, because there's a lot of people who say that they can come to their studio or their teaching, but the environment really isn't such. And I think you not just invite that, but you've actually created the environment where it is accessible. So I just want
Oh,
to say,
thanks.
well,
Thanks, Neil. That means a lot. But you know what? I think we learn from the people that we teach, and we say that we're teachers, but actually we are as much students as the people that walk through the doors of wherever it is that we're teaching. And I have learned the most from some of the students that I've come into contact with.
mm, mm,
And
yeah.
it's all very well saying, oh no, everybody is welcome. And then somebody arrives in a wheelchair and you think, oh, welcome, welcome. And meanwhile, you're thinking, oh my goodness, hang on, what I planned wasn't really this. And then you've got to work around that. Or when I used to live in my previous home, one of my neighbors had a daughter who was blind, and this girl was amazing. But I'd never taught anybody blind before. And you can't just say, I will just put your foot like this, because they can't see what put on your foot like that looks like. So you've got to be really precise in your cueing.
Mm. That's always been one of my favorite practices in teaching, is to teach a blindfolded class. So everyone has a blindfold on, and then or the teacher, whoever it is, teaches, and then you see how you're cueing, even if a person's been coming to your class for years and years and years, and they actually know what you
Mm.
mean and the name of the posture. And then you just think, wow, is that really how I said that or what I said? Because you see arms and legs going in complete directions that you
Yeah.
weren't intending them to go. So you got to be like spot on with your
Mm.
explanation of
Yeah,
things.
and also I think that it teaches us to focus on the energy of the pose, what it feels like, as opposed to what it looks like.
Oh,
So you can do an amazing tree pose in a chair, in a wheelchair, and somebody else can do one balancing on one toe and whatever. But the energy is essentially the same. What is it that the pose is teaching you? What do you feel?
yeah,
So
yeah,
we often forget about that. We think about what it looks like rather than what it feels like.
yeah. And so do you find that that is something that you've experienced and gained with time in your practice? And like, how has your practice shifted over the
Um,
year?
well, I still quite like a challenge and practice. I remember
Yes, you
telling
do.
I remember
When you
telling
teach,
Rabia, yeah,
you
I
give us
remember
a
telling
little
but
class.
people watching this might know Rabia. And when I told Rabia that that I'd been doing yin yoga, the look on her face is, "What? You've been doing yin?" She's like rolling around laughing. But um, but yeah. So although I still like an active practice, my body isn't 25 anymore. It's not 35 anymore. It's not 45 anymore. And so I still have quite an active practice, but it's not the same.
Mm, mm,
And I think that is also something that comes with time, that um, our practice does evolve. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but it does evolve. Everything changes. We know for a fact that, you know, from one day to the next, we are different. We might feel very differently in the afternoon compared to we felt in the morning. So we're definitely going to feel different 10 years down the line. Um, and I think just explore and keep learning, stay curious, learn different poses, um, learn more information, and then pass that on to the people that you teach, or if you're a teacher, or if you're not a teacher, just bring that new knowledge into your, or that new awareness into your own practice. Yeah, just keep evolving and stay curious.
mm, mm. And what have you found like over the years, like with your
Mm.
personal practice? Like, how has that shifted and changed in the sense, like, I know with mine, I definitely go into like those spikes where I'm like, where I have a good personal practice, my own practice, and then it like dips completely and it's disappeared, and then all of a sudden it resurrects again. And like at the moment I'm in a really good space because it is resurrected again and I feel fantastic and everything is wonderful and like I've got a lot more energy. So like over the years, over the last 10, 15 years, like how
Mm.
have you noticed your practice shifting and changing?
Um,
Because you've always been very regular with getting on the mat from what I can remember.
um, I, I think it's not that I'm not trying, but I'm trying differently. Does that make any sense? Because
Okay.
um, for many years, I forced myself to do pigeon, and my knees do not like pigeon. They really, really don't. And in fact, the only injuries, the yoga injuries that I've had have been entirely my own fault. Wasn't a teacher that put me into a pose. It was me making myself do something that I knew deep down I shouldn't have done.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying that I've conquered that, because you know what? We get older, but our ego is right there. Yeah, our ego is kind of still in high school. I don't know what happens there, but anyway. And but I'm getting better at easing back from the things that I know aren't actually going to work for me.
Mm, mm.
Um, I know that I don't feel great if I get too hot. It's not that I don't do any heat time poses, but it would not make any sense whatsoever for me to do like a full-on really hot practice.
Yeah.
Um,
And so
yeah.
I don't know if I'm allowed to bring this up in this conversation. I can cut it out if I'm not allowed to. But
Mm.
when I met you, you also had been diagnosed with fibromyalgia, right?
No, it wasn't FM, it was MS.
It was MS. Sorry, MS.
Yeah.
Okay. And you had pretty much told your doctor, like, I'm not going on meds, I'm doing
Fly
yoga.
a kite, yeah.
And he was super impressed as to the results. Would you be willing to share a little bit of that story?
Yeah, look,
Those-
just as an aside there, when it comes to anything medical, if you are watching this or listening to this and you want to forward this to somebody, remember that what happened to me, and that everybody is extremely different. So my experience might not necessarily be your experience or their experience. Um, something it's a bit difficult to explain, but something deep inside to me that actually I would have probably ignored, but for this reason, whatever, I didn't. Something deep inside told me that I was on the right course and that I should carry on doing what I was doing, that I should eat a more sort of not exactly totally plant-based diet, but a lot more fruit and veg, and that actually my yoga practice was what was going to get me through it. I cannot offer you any other sort of explanation. It was just something that I felt deeply. And yes, I did have all of the tests and I was offered various types of treatment, but it just felt really, really wrong to do it. Just, I suppose it's the same as one person being diagnosed with cancer and they go along with chemo and that works for them and it works out. And then somebody else will say, no, I'm not going in this direction whatsoever. So I guess it's kind of like that. But yeah, but definitely my yoga practice has kept me well. I'm very glad that I chose to go the direction that I went in. But also it's meant that I've had to learn when to pull back. So if I have been feeling a bit tired, I thought, okay, well, today is not an active day. I'm just gonna pull back a little bit. I might not do any yoga. I'll just read about something, or you just got to be sensible about it. And I think that applies to anybody with anything. So
Mm.
balance, balance, balance.
And so where are you now with your MS? I'm really intrigued because I
I don't
know
know.
that
I haven't actually been for a checkup forever, which um ah, maybe I should, maybe I shouldn't. I don't know. I don't I
and do you
don't
feel
I don't
like
feel any
symptoms come
different.
on, or do you notice it more strongly at certain times? Is it less apparent now
No,
than 10 years ago? Like,
it's actually quite it's difficult to work out exactly what's going on because menopause will give you some of the same symptoms. So
interesting.
yeah, yeah. So just that overheating thing.
Mm.
Um, if you have MS, you're not supposed to get overheated, but it's the same for menopause. So I'm not sure. I'm really not sure.
Okay, good.
But I'm sorry, I can't give you a more definitive answer.
No, it's all good. I just think it's such a fascinating story because it is
Um,
a big.
I think that has had a massive impact on the way that I teach. and who I welcome into my studio, because I will never ever say to someone, oh, well, you can't. This is not for you.
Mm.
My approach has always been, you're very, very welcome. You might get on with me, you might not. So that doesn't necessarily mean that yoga is not for you, but maybe I'm just not for you. If that's the case, please go and find another lovely teacher that's going to work better for you. But yeah, just allowing people to try.
Mm. Mm.
I think that's really so important, just to allow people to try.
Yeah. And I think that's the other thing, is that, you know what, you may not resonate with a specific teacher, you may not resonate with a specific style of yoga, but go around,
No,
test and explore and try. Like, it's not just, you
no,
know, like the first person you date is not very often the first person you the only person you're going to marry. Like, there may
no,
be a fish in the water that
no. I mean,
you go test.
something as simple as a hairdresser. Your friend can go and always look fantastic. You go to the same person and you think, no, never, ever again. And it's the same with GPs and dentists and whoever else. You either resonate with that person or you don't. If you don't like your friend's hairdresser, you're still going to go and have your hair cut, but with somebody else. So if you don't like your yoga teacher, go find a different one. There are, especially if you're in Cape Town, there are literally thousands. It's like wall-to-wall yoga teachers. There will be somebody that you will like.
Exactly. Even
Yeah.
if you tried a new teacher every single day, you wouldn't get through all the yoga teachers.
No. It might be a bit of it might be expensive paying for all the walk-ins, but you would find somebody eventually.
Yeah. I love it, V. I love it. So what other advice, insights would you give to kind of, I suppose there are two kind of like people I would love you to speak to. One is kind of like the yoga teacher. Like, what advice do you have to that person? And then the other one is that person who is maybe in that realm of like, I haven't done yoga, I'm a little unfit, I may be a bit too old, flexible, like, I only see on social media all these like woohoo yogis. Is yoga really for me? So kind of like these two people, like, what kind of like advice would you have for them?
Okay, so as far as another yoga teacher is concerned, what direction were you thinking in, Nina?
I was just thinking, like, how do they make it more accessible for the general public, maybe?
Okay, so if you are looking to offer or to advertise somewhere that a venue that's more accessible. So for instance, one of the places that I'm currently teaching at is our local gym. It's the practice that I offer is accessible in the sense that I can offer lots of variations for whatever pose comes up. However, the venue is not. If you can't get up the stairs, you can't get to my practice. So it's even something like that. If you have stairs lead into your studio, it's not an accessible venue. If maybe there aren't any stairs, but maybe the corridors are narrow, maybe the doors don't open in the right direction or wide enough, then it's not accessible for people in wheelchairs. So, think about it. Look at where you're teaching from the point of view of somebody who has some sort of movement challenge. So that's your first thing. And then also, look, you might not want to teach an accessible practice. If you want to teach vinyasa and that's your thing, and everybody has to be able to do that. And let's face it, there is a place for that. It's really
Yeah.
nice sometimes to go to a quick flow class, and it's a lot of fun. And if that's what you want to teach, then go ahead and carry on with that. There's no point in calling it accessible because it's not. So don't pretend that it is. But you've
I
got to
think
be
that's
true.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point that you're making, in the sense that, like, it makes you look at your values. Like, there
Oh,
to be
Nina,
sugar-coated, so to speak.
no. Nina, you broke up there. Okay, now you're back.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. Yeah, so just getting back to that example that I gave, if you teach a quick class, like a beautiful vinyasa, that does not mean that you are a bad person. It's not. It's just what you do, and you probably do it really, really well. I don't teach vinyasa anymore for a number of reasons. If I'm quite honest, sometimes I forget the sequence that I've put together. So that's a good reason not to do it. And then the other thing is that I've found that in the groups that I've taught in the past, somebody's always showing off and somebody gets left behind. And that's not really what I'm aiming to sort of create. But nothing wrong with teaching a really strong or a very active yoga class. Nothing at all. There have to be different aspects.
Yeah.
Also, you have to do a lot of research if you really want to make your classes more accessible. You have to be prepared to put in the work. If somebody says, "Hey, I'd love to come to your class, but I have scoliosis, or I have this, or I have that." If you're not sure, say to them, "Look, I'm happy for you to come, but I've never taught anybody with XYZ. So if you don't mind me learning alongside you, then I'm sure we can work together." But be honest about it. Don't pretend that you know everything, because none of us do.
Mm.
You know, unless you're a surgeon who also happens to be a yoga teacher, you're not going to have the expertise. So just learn, practice, you know. Luckily, we've got the internet, which I know that everything you read isn't true. We've got access to a whole lot of information that we never ever had before. So, and have fun researching. You end up learning all kinds of things. You know, you go down all these weird rabbit holes and you might end up somewhere completely different, but you're going to learn.
Yeah. Yeah.
The person, okay, so swinging back to what you asked about somebody being concerned that they're too old to come to a yoga class. I don't think you're ever too old. You might be practicing differently to the person standing next to you, depending on how old they are or how long they've been practicing for.
Mm.
And if your main excuse is that you can't come because you're too stiff, then you are exactly the person who should be coming.
Yeah.
Um,
And you were saying also kind of like a lot of your students have been sharing or sent you that little clip on the 93, I don't know what she is, 93 or 102
yeah.
year old doing yoga, and getting inspiration from her.
Yeah, so that's great. I'm really grateful to that granny. However, because older people get really excited. They'll send me this clip that I must have seen, I don't know how many times before. And I said, "Oh no, I've just found this. Isn't this fantastic? It's really inspiring." And I say, "Yes, it is. But if you read her story, she started to practice when she was 60, which is fantastic. But it means that she's had 33 years of practice. It's a long time. Whichever way you slice it, 33 years is a long time.
Mm.
So even though you might be not as old as this lady because you are maybe 70 or whatever it is, don't forget about the practice."
Yeah. And it
Um,
starts by getting onto your mat.
exactly. And also, and this never ever changes, just repeatedly reminding people yoga is not a team practice. It's really not, it's not a team sport. We create these little communities, but it's not a team sport.
Mm.
Your yoga mat is like a little island and it has a population of one. So that means you are in charge and you can be a kind, wise ruler, or you can be a dictator. You can decide which of those roles you fulfill. And also, it doesn't have to be a mat. You know, a yoga mat is essentially your yoga space. So you could be sitting in a chair of whatever type, and that is your yoga space.
Mm.
So that is your mat. Yeah.
I love that analogy because that's so UV. Like, be on your little island. You can be your own dictator if you want. You can be like a loving ruler, as you please, as you choose. And I love just that imagery because it is. We have the power to choose, like how we speak to ourselves,
Yeah.
how we interact with ourselves, what we put out.
Mm.
Because at the end of the day, no one else really cares, to be honest.
No, they don't. It's like, when somebody says, imagine sticking your hand in a bucket of water and you take your hand out and you actually can't see any difference. Essentially, I mean, we love to think they were all very, very special. Sorry.
We gotta come and go with the wind and the breeze.
Yeah. And then, I just thought about this yesterday that I wanted to mention as well. So we know all about asana, postures, and breath work, pranayama. But what about mudra? We can do so much with our hands. You don't have to be able to sit in lotus. You can do a really deep yoga practice using mudra and maybe mantra if people are open to it. But yeah, so that's always a nice thing to bring into practice for older people. And there's been some really interesting research done over the past couple of years with yoga and Alzheimer's. And what is really cool, I think, that there's always been research around yoga, but there were never very, very big studies, and it maybe didn't have a lot of funding, so it never really gained a lot of recognition regardless of the fact whether it might have been valuable or not. But now that's changing. So now there's money behind the studies. And when there's money behind something, it means that you have more professionals involved. You've got a wider number of volunteers in the study. And they've found that people who practice yoga regularly, especially mudra and mantra, so the kirtan kriya, just doing that for 12 minutes a day can actually reduce the effects of Alzheimer's and boost neurological activity. I mean, that is amazing. And that's just not yoga hoo-ha. That is stark scientific fact.
Well, if that isn't going to motivate every single person to start working with mudras and doing couple of mantras here and there, I don't know what is. I was just like, I
Yeah,
can see like my mudra book there. I'm like, okay, that is going to be whipped open today. And again, like you're saying, 12 minutes a day is not long. How many people are
it's
scrolling
not.
on their phone looking at something? You can,
Oh, yeah, no. Facebook, gotta love it or hate it, but it can steal your time in an instant. And before you know it, you think, oh, I've been scrolling through the kind of kittens for like an hour.
Mhm. Exactly. So before you
Uh,
scroll, do your 12 minutes of mudras and mantras.
yeah. So,
I'm
kirtan,
gonna I'm grabbing my book now, like
uh,
while we speak, and like this is
okay.
gonna be like inspiration for everyone. I'm just like randomly going to open at a page. There we go.
Okay,
So
what have we got there? Vira Mudra. What does that say, Nina? Gesture of?
okay, so what do we have here? Vajra Mudra, gesture
Oh,
of the fiery thunderbolt. Press your
okay.
thumb onto the side of your middle fingernail, middle thumb on the side of your middle fingernail, the ring
Yeah,
finger on the other side of your middle finger,
yes.
the little finger at the side of your ring finger. Extend your index finger and do this with each hand. Do as
Oh,
needed or
okay.
3 times a day for 5 minutes. There you go. That's like your 12, 15 minutes, 12, what you were
Yeah.
saying. In addition, relief can be obtained by massaging the root of the nose or the center of the forehead, the back of the head, and the nape of the neck with the middle finger. So
Yeah.
it is pretty much to help with stimulating circulation. That's what the gesture of the fiery thunderbolt is all about.
Mm.
And you're going to love this book by Gertrude Hirsch. I think you've also got her book here.
Yes. I've got that book. It's a slightly more tattered version, but yes.
Well, best I start getting
Yeah.
this one more tattered and getting back into it. So
No, it's really interesting. Anybody can do these. You don't have to be on a mat. You don't even have to be wearing stretchy pants.
exactly. You can be lying on your couch,
Although,
sitting
Nina, if we sit, we know that our spinal column is the energetic highway of our body. So best we open that highway and breathe.
fair enough, fair enough.
Yeah.
V, it is always so much fun to chat with you. I absolutely love connecting. You always make me laugh, and you always have such deep wisdom and insights. And
Well, thank you for inviting me. And, you know, I mean, over time we do learn a lot, but we only learn a lot because we had fabulous teachers, Nina. So thank you.
well, thank you for being a fabulous student and a teacher as well. That's what I love about, like, the studio and everything we've created. It's like these become teachers, and then those teachers come and teach us, and oh, it's fantastic. It's like a full circle. So I so acknowledge and appreciate all the work that you offer and you do to.
Thank you, but you too. But yeah, I mean, anybody who is thinking or has been reticent about trying yoga, please go and try it. Please, please, please. It's not about being a little pretzel. It's just about finding a little bit of peace within yourself and moving your body in ways that you hadn't thought about. It's fun. I think it's fun. Don't you think it's fun, Nina?
I do. I do. And when you've got the right people around and you've got the right
Yeah.
community, it is a lot of fun. So I agree. I agree. And you can make it, like you're saying, your own, no matter where you are. So if you just feel you want a quiet place, you can go to your class and you can just switch off and be quiet. And if you want to have a little bit of interaction and a little bit of, quirkiness with the teacher back and forth, like if that's a space, if that's the teacher who does that, because I am that teacher where, we do have a little bit of banter back and forth between the
Yeah,
students and
I think you must have. I always say to people, remember, I'm not the only one who's allowed to talk. If you've got a question or a comment, then share it. So,
yeah, yeah. So
Nina, we could sit here and talk about yoga till literally the cows came home.
we really could. And I have got those lunch
Yeah.
visitors at
Oh,
my
yeah,
door.
that's true. You can't just give them a little slice of toast or.
Yeah, peanut butter and toast won't fly here on the farm.
No.
We thank
Alrighty.
you so much,
No,
so much.
thank you so much. Thank you, thank you. And it was so nice chatting to you. And hopefully we'll chat again soon.
Definitely, definitely.
Thank you, Nina.